did you ever get to a point in your life where you'd earned a certain amount of money and you felt that you'd achieved everything that you ever wanted from being driven in this way where every decision was about the money, that you then went, oh, like I've got everything I thought I wanted, but I still don't have the recognition. I still don't have the maybe the status that you wanted, or maybe
It's
the
more the
opposite of
latter.
that. Maybe, yeah, mate.
It's more the latter slash opposite, because what I realized is there was never a big enough amount.
Mm,
So it wasn't about the money.
mm,
So, I had two Porsches, seven-figure house, all that sort of stuff, crazy toys, all the things you'd expect someone would have. It got a bit crazy, actually. Out the front of our road, we had seven Porsches lined up at one point. They weren't all mine, but two were mine. But it was that sort of thing, right? So it wasn't about the money. It was about what you look like and perceived. And so the realization later on, and we can get into this, was actually what happens if I reframe everything and make it not about the money? What does
mm,
that look like? And that was the thing that changed my trajectory after that. But
yeah.
let me give you a bit of the backstory, to your question about where does it come from. So I didn't grow up in a very wealthy family. I had a great family, right? But we had money issues in two different ways. So my mum was married a number of times, was a single mother. Massive respect for what she had to do to kind of raise me. My grandfather acted more like a father figure to me because there wasn't really a guy around to give that. He was a very successful businessman, but then had a heart attack in his early 40s. In fact, he was the first Australian to have open heart surgery and then run a marathon after having that treatment. So he was actually on the TV in quite, sort of mini famous way. But he then lived a lot of his life in his 40s, 50s, and 60s. He ended up passing away when he was 78. But he lived this life of massive scarcity and fear because the doctors kept saying to him, you're going to die any moment, because they weren't really used to this level of condition. So I had that going on one side. I had no money, and my mum kind of trying to make ends meet on the other side. Then my mum got remarried, and I said a couple of times, and one of her husbands, had quite a lot of debt, and there was always people knocking on the door trying to get money from us. And so this is all from when I'm sort of 7 or 8 years of age, certainly from what I can remember, all the way up until my sort of mid-teens. And that's when I started my first business, actually, was around 16, 17. But I was very money focused from
Mm,
that age, trying to work out a way that I wasn't going to end up in that situation ever again.
yeah. 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 And I think that it's so interesting. There's a friend of mine, Don Wood, Dr. Don Wood, who has a saying which I'm going to get wrong, which is along the lines of when you begin to understand the environmental conditions of somebody's life, then you understand why they do what they do.
Mm.
And that's the driver, right? So for you, that it was a combination of those circumstances that got you to that point that then sent you off on the trajectory to do the things you did in the way that you did. And that drove you. What happened in 2018?
So a number of things came together at once. And I wouldn't say there was an event that happened very, very acutely, which I'll go into. But it was the build up to that event that's the interesting part. So what happened is I went to bed one night in 20, it was 2017, actually, just towards the end of 2017. And I was closing a big deal. It was one of the big exits I was involved in. My dad had come back into my life very quickly and passed away very quickly. Now, this is my biological father. Again, for context, he'd left when I was 2 years of age and came back into my life in my mid 30s, just before my first daughter was born. So we had a bit of time together, learned a lot about who he was, which then obviously meant I learned a lot about who I was. And then he had cancer and died within 12 months of the diagnosis. So this had all kind of been building up. And this particular night, I went to bed and I literally crushed a couple of teeth in the right side of my jaw. So not broke them fully, but was grinding my teeth to a point where I'd actually chipped away some of the teeth. Now, this is anyone who wants to Google this is not an easy thing to do. And I ended up going to the dentist the next morning. I ended up at the doctor as well. And the dentist said that you've literally had an event, a very stressful event that I can't remember. So I went to sleep. So I can't remember a dream or anything. But I woke up with this traumatic incident at about 3 in the morning in pain. like I could, just woke up and this was so throbbing. And at the time, I wasn't sure what had happened. I thought, has something fallen and hit me in the face? I thought, like, has something fallen from the roof? Then it was, have I been bitten by something? And I remember looking in the mirror in my bathroom. I walked in there and seeing this swelling. And I remember thinking at that point in time, what's happened? And I worked out that I'd broken some teeth because I found some teeth in my mouth. And I remember thinking at that point, what's led to this? Why am I here? And it was a really interesting, really visceral feeling, of what happened. And it was within literally weeks of that event and having my teeth fixed and then working everything out that I decided to reach out to a friend who was very successful in many ways. So wealthy, retired, in his 30s, beautiful family, doing all sorts of cool stuff. Always been someone who was a bit different in our social group versus me and all of my mates who went, to the pool halls and drank beer during our university days. He wasn't doing any of that. So I called him up and said, listen, this has happened and I need to make some changes. Can you recommend something? And he said to me, he said, all those years when you were going out and drinking, I never came out. And he said, what I was doing? And I said, yeah, I know you were into personal development. And he said, yeah, I was going to like events and things like that on, Tony Robbins and whatever. And he said, I'm going to suggest that that's what you need to do now. And he said, I want you to go to your computer, look up the next Unleash the Power Within event. And we hadn't even talked about who. He just suggested this. And he said, I want you to buy tickets and just go to it. And he said, suspend judgment, spend 4 days in a room, and then come back and tell me what you think. So I did it. So I literally went online, found the next program that Tony was running was in 2018 in Chicago. And I said to my wife, I kind of need to do this. And she was like, yeah, you definitely need to do this. And I did it. And then I went away. And then in that event, I crafted the mission, if you like, of what I do now based on some stimulus that I learnt over those 4 days about myself and lots of other things. And that was the change.
I'm going to be sending a free copy of my book, North Star Thinking, Master Your Mindset and Live a Life You Love, to someone that comments on this video. And if you're loving this video, then hit like and subscribe to get more.